I'm standing in the middle of the Pagani Vineyard, and this morning we're going to talk about one of the unique characteristics of this vineyard, the fact that it's planted to a field blend. The Pagani Vineyard is one of the most unique and historical vineyards in California. It was planted well over 100 years ago by the Pagani family and is farmed still today by that same family. When we're talking about field blends, we're referring to the fact that the vineyard was planted not to one single varietal, but to multi-varietals. And that makes it different than most modern vineyards, which typically are planted to just one specific varietal. The vineyards that were planted over 100 years ago, they chose a select number of varietals which they felt complemented each other, planted them in varying proportions, and then those grapes are harvested together, taken to the winery, and they're co-fermented. So the varietals that we're talking about here are primarily Zinfandel. This vineyard is planted to about 75% Zinfandel. About 10% of it is Alicante, 5% Petit Syrah, a little bit of Carignan, and there's also some white varietals as well. The white varietals were planted not so much to add flavor to the wine, but because white varietals typically have a very high acidity. One of the unique things here at Pagani is that acidity. This is a relatively cool pocket within Sonoma Valley, and typically, and this year is no different, this is one of the last vineyards we harvest. And that means the grapes mature over a longer period, retaining that natural acidity. The acidity, I sometimes refer to it almost like the glue of the wine. It sort of holds it together. It gives the wine that definition, and it really gives it that focus that makes the experience and the flavors so delicious when we taste the wine. This is a Zinfandel vine, and we know it's a Zinfandel vine for a number of reasons. You can see that the cluster has a shoulder on it. That's very typical of Zinfandel. The ripening is fairly uniform, although you can see that there's also some raisioning which comes in late in the season. The other thing we can also look at is the leaf, which on a Zinfandel vine tends to be very jagged, and when you turn it over, there's sort of a peach fuzz. One of the most common questions I get is, so why would they plant these different varietals, and how do they ripen together? You would think that Zinfandel ripens at one point, Petit Syrah ripens at a different point, therefore if you pick the Zinfandel when it's ripe, aren't the other varietals not ripe at that point? And truly one of the magical and uncanny things about these field blend vineyards is that I think there was definitely a method to the madness. That is, the people planting this were thinking about that, and they chose these varietals because Zinfandel will ripen at a higher sugar. But Petit Syrah, for example, even though it's at a lower sugar, is physiologically ripe. It tastes ripe. And that is why it really, really works when we co-ferment them, because you're getting all of that fruit, that richness, that ripeness from the Zinfandel. But then you have the Petit Syrah, which brings in the color, the tannin, the structure, and as we mentioned, those small amount of white varietals which really enhance the acidity. The Pagani Vineyard is really a perfect example of a field blend and what a field blend can do to make a great wine.